Now, I know what you're thinking. My God, she's a braggadocious woman. Braggadocious? Anybody know what that means, braggadocious? No, you don't. I made it up. Braggadocious, a word that I made up, means confidence, to put yourself out into the world with confidence. Now, I have to say, I wasn't always a braggadocious person, but I was a braggadocious 5-year-old. And let me tell you how it started from the beginning. I remember the day that I walked into junior kindergarten, and there it was at the back of the room, a Wendy house. Now, for those of you who grew up with Harry Potter, I grew up with Peter Pan and Wendy. And that kind of tells you just how old I am. But there it was, this Wendy house, a miniature toy house where kids could go in and play. And there were little tables and chairs and little dolly teacups where you could have little dolly tea parties. Oh, I died and thought that I'd gone to heaven when I looked into this Wendy house. And on the side of the wall, a whole row of Barbies. Now, they were blonde, blue-eyed Barbies, but I didn't care. There wasn't a lot of diversity when I was growing up, but I didn't care. It was Barbie. And tucked away in the back corner, the pièce de résistance, an easy bake oven. Did I tell you that I died and went to heaven? Well, I died and I went to heaven again because I wanted to play in that Wendy house. But I never did. Boys got to play in the Wendy house. Little Denise Richards on the first day of class peed her pants. She got to play, but I never did. And I sat in that classroom for 3 whole years. No, I did not fail junior kindergarten. I had the same teacher 3 years in a row. And I pined and I prayed and I yearned to play in that Wendy house. That braggadocious little girl that walked into that class, braggadociety disappeared. Low self-esteem, lack of confidence, low self-worth entered instead. I carried those feelings with me all the way through my time in school. And when it was time for me to transition from junior school into secondary school, which that was what it's called in Britain, or high school in Canada, it was like a stake in my heart. You see, I grew up in London, England, and I grew up at the time of the 11 plus. And the 11 Plus was a streaming system that they had in Britain at the time. And kids could go to grammar school for the rich kids and the very smart kids. There was comprehensive school for the middle class kids. And there was secondary modern for the working class and the poor. Now, on the top 11 kids who passed on the 11 plus would automatically be slotted to go to grammar schools. I was one of the highest scoring girls in my class. I scored 4th. Leslie Chartres and myself, we both scored 4th. That year, 10 out of 11 kids got to go to grammar school. I did not. And whereas in the United States, they took poor kids from poor neighborhoods and bused them to good neighborhoods, the exact opposite happened to me. Now, I grew up in a place called Herne Hill, and the house that I grew up in, you probably wouldn't be able to buy it today. By the time I went back, they had turned it into three separate flats. So it was a pretty nice house. It's a pretty nice neighborhood. We had Turkish kids, we had Irish kids, we had black kids, and it was a very nice neighborhood. And we all got along. I think primarily it was because our parents all drank in the pub at the end of the street. But I digress. So back to the 11 plus. So I did not get into a grammar school. And by the time the application, the rejection, and the appeals process had gone through, I was left scrambling to find a good school. I ended up taking 2 buses, going to a secondary modern school, brand new school, but in one of the poorest boroughs in London, England. The message that I heard very loud and clear, Veronica, you stay here. Don't go over there. Now, we can all be tricked into thinking that we are less than, because we're different. And if we tell ourselves that enough times, that then becomes a belief from which we operate from. Do you have a lie that you tell yourself that you now believe? Well, for me, things didn't change until I got into my mid-20s. I was living in Canada by that time and attending a university, one of the best in Canada, I might add. And that was when I discovered the works of Maya Angelou. She could not have come into my life at a more opportune time. I read her works, her poetry, her writings with a graviciousness. Gravicious? Anybody know what that means? Of course you don't, I made it up. Gravicious, to seek knowledge and learning with greed, to go out there and learn and get as much knowledge as you can. I read her stuff with a graviciousness. It was like food for my soul. I didn't realize just how much inspiration I missed and I needed as a little girl. You know, let me get this right because this is the message. When we take the time to redefine who we are, we begin to connect with ourselves at our core. And when we connect with ourselves at our core, we can then connect to our truth. And that is how I now operate. You see, I found a way to reconnect to that braggadocious little girl that was lost all of those years. And I found a way to connect and find my greatness within. So, now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. But when you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say, it's the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need for my care. 'Cause I'm a woman. Phenomenal woman. That's me.